Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we are going to be discussing the exciting news that the Israeli hostages, after 2 years of being in that hell which is Gaza, being held by Hamas in the most horrific conditions, have finally come home to their loved ones. And in this program today I'm joined by my good friend Sharon Klaff. She's also a friend of the Middle East Report and Revelation TV and loved by our viewers. Sharon, it's great to see you back on the Middle East Report, particularly after 2 years of hell for the Israeli hostages, and now the final 20 are finally home, reunited with their loved ones. But before we talk about these joyful times in Israel, and seeing Israelis smile for the first time in 2 years is nothing less than extraordinary. But unpack for us what the high holidays have been like for you. The Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and what have you.
Okay, so hi Simon, thanks for having me back again. So yeah, the high holidays, they come around once a year. They last for about 3 weeks. But this year I think they were a little bit more poignant because of the situation in Israel and because of the expectations. We all sort of anticipated that this war was going to come to an end, but nobody knew that it was actually going to develop. So I think there were a lot of prayers. There were a lot of people basically praying that this was going to happen. And I think the force of those prayers probably helped to bring it around now at this time of year, where those poor people, I mean, you know, the words escape you to describe what they went through, and now they're home. So yeah, I think that makes this year far more important than ever, I think.
And how difficult were the high holidays to celebrate this year, particularly in this rabid climate of Jew hatred that has literally infected our nation, infected the West, and knowing that it's not easy being Jewish in this country, sadly, under the present spiritual and political climate that we find ourselves in?
Okay, so not just the high holidays, just generally being Jewish is quite difficult in the UK at the moment, probably being anywhere at the moment. I had lots to say to you about that, but driving over I was listening to Julia Hartley-Brewer talking. I don't know if you heard it this morning.
No, I didn't. I used to work with her a long time ago. But
okay, so the man from Oxford, one of these wonderful young Oxford students, whose name escapes me now, came with his kafir on and his loud hailer, and in this very posh English voice he said to the crowd, "Join me, this is the chant we're going to do." And the chant was, I wrote it down, "Gaza, Gaza, make us proud. Help us put the Zios in the ground." And I'm in my car in all the traffic, and I felt almost as though everything drained out of me. It was like I can't describe it. It may be jumping into hell, basically. That a young man with a posh accent at Oxford, from Welland Garden City, so he's not deprived, he's not from the area, he's probably never been to the area, and he finds it in himself to say these words, basically saying, kill people. Not only Jews, but anybody who supports Israel, anybody who claims to be a Zionist, must be put in the ground by Gaza. And who is Gaza? Gaza is Hamas. Gaza is terrorism. So how did it feel? I don't know, when I said it to you, I saw your face go like this. So I think
it's frightening. So effectively that's calling for genocide.
Genocide.
And that's an incitement to genocide.
Of Jews and of people who support Jews. Anybody who supports the state of Israel, which is probably every Christian in the world, basically. And but that's not the only one. I mean, the call for Khyber, which isn't new. People are, it's new now on the news, but going back almost, 20 years, 15, 20 years, they were reciting this on the streets. And I remember going to the policeman who was in charge of the demo at the time and saying, would you like a translation? And he said, no. I said, would you like us to come and tell the police what these people are calling for? Because they're calling for my death. This was 15, 20 years ago. And here they are, still doing it. Nobody's stopping them.
And regarding this, if we kind of move on to the tragedy that we saw on Yom Kippur in Manchester, I know Manchester very well after spending 3 years there at the University of Manchester and having met many members of the Jewish community there up in Manchester, and having had them on this programme as well. They're a resilient lot, and they're very active on behalf of Israel. And just share with us your thoughts on what happened on Yom Kippur when the Islamists rammed the gates at Neaton Community Synagogue in North Manchester and killed and murdered the security guard, and then went on a mad stabbing spree before the police thankfully shot him dead. But 8 minutes of sheer horror and terror that occurred in Manchester during Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar.
Well, it was kind of the same kind of shock you got when you woke up 2 years ago on the 7th of October when you saw the white truck driving around that roundabout in Storot, and you thought, what's happening? And I found out about it quite late because it was Yom Kippur, and it was a shock, but it wasn't unexpected. You know that most Jewish, well, almost every Jew expects some sort of violence. That's why we have protection. That's why every school, every synagogue has got people outside, locked gates, fences around schools. Every function you have has got security guards. So you kind of expect it, but because it doesn't happen regularly, I can't remember when last it happened, that somebody in a Jewish place of worship or school was attacked. And it was a shock and sad, very sad that this man, which you knew straight away, as soon as it happened, you knew what his background was. And of course, Keir Starmer made an announcement that this was a British citizen of Syrian heritage. And when people use that kind of phraseology, you know this is a jihadi, and they're trying to hide it.
You couldn't really hide it with his name because his name was called Jihad.
We didn't know his name at that stage, but he knew it. He knew it because the man was on bail. So it wasn't difficult for him to find out from his police force what's going on here. So he knew it, and he looked in the camera, and this is what he said to the people he represents, the people he's meant to be Prime Minister of. And I don't know if it shocks me anymore that this is going on. It's, you know, that I've tried to fight it for a long time, and so it's not been unexpected. I feel very sad for the people who are involved. They went to pray, innocent people.
Absolutely.
You know, and this guy wasn't innocent. He was ostensibly, reportedly, a bigamist. He had an ex-girlfriend who came out afterwards to say how he'd abused her. He was on bail for, what had he done? I can't remember what he did. On bail for something or other. So he was known to the authorities. And in fact, he called 999 that morning and basically told them what he was going to do. Did you know that?
I was aware of that.
Yeah.
That came out. So let's remind ourselves of the horror that befell Manchester's Jewish community on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, that was Yom Kippur.
As Jewish people prayed in synagogues around the world on Yom Kippur, the terrorist attack outside a synagogue in Manchester, UK, left 2 dead and 4 others seriously wounded. The police say one of the 2 men killed may have died from a police bullet.
Tonight, our first thoughts are with the families of those people who died, those injured, and those traumatized by this and horrific anti-Semitic attack on our Jewish friends and neighbours. We condemn it outright.
Following the ramming and stabbing attack, police immediately tightened security at synagogues throughout the country. British Jews felt such an attack was inevitable amidst increasing anti-Semitism in the UK. And Israeli leaders expressed their grief and said they have been warning about such attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a statement, Israel grieves with the Jewish community in the UK after the barbaric terror attack in Manchester. Our hearts are with the families of the murdered, and we pray for the swift recovery of the wounded. As I warned at the UN, weakness in the face of terrorism only brings more terrorism. Only strength and unity can defeat it. Israeli President Isaac Herzog revealed he had written a letter to British King Charles III a few days ago, warning of rising anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hatred in the UK, along with Australia and Canada.
Excellent reports put together by our friends at CBN, which does remind us of the importance of standing with our Jewish community, particularly the Jewish community in Manchester that are feeling that grief and that pain as this terrorist attack was targeted at them. But it's not only an attack on them, it's an attack on all of us who share our deep Judeo-Christian values. Sharon, now on to the good news. We faced the tragic news of what's happened here on Yom Kippur, but now we have to look at the kind of good news. And what is your thoughts on President Trump's implementation of phase 1 of the Gaza peace plan, point 20, which saw a ceasefire come into place on last Saturday, and now on Monday the 13th of October we've seen, as part of the ceasefire agreement by Hamas, the release of the 20 Israeli hostages still alive, returning back to their loved ones.
Well, fantastic. I mean, what President Trump wants, President Trump gets. So fantastic. I mean, anybody who can criticize what he's done and the result of what he's done by bringing these people out of the dungeons of Gaza can't be thinking right. So I think he's done an amazing job. He hasn't done it without Bibi, by the way, without Prime Minister Netanyahu. They work together. You can see it. They actually play off each other, and they work together. And I think they devised this plan, and it worked. So that's a plus. The whole plan, I don't know how much you want to go into it now, but the whole 20 points of the plan got good points because the hostages are out. Where it's going, it seems to me a little bit of a mush. It seems to be using words and saying things that people want to hear, but I'm not sure how much it means. Ceasefire, yes. On the one hand, using Palestinians to administer the place. On the other hand, saying the PA will have no role in it. Arming Palestinians as police, when we know what the previous arrangements have done when they armed Palestinians as police. And we can go into that more detail later. So I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I think it's basically achieved its aim. It put a halt to the war. I don't think it stopped it. It's put a halt to the fighting. It's created a bit of a breather for people to reassess and see how we can go forward, how things in the future might pan out. We've already seen what Hamas has done. They've come out of their dungeons. They've put on their uniforms. They've suddenly got beautiful cars. I don't know if you saw the lovely white cars they're driving around in with their guns like they used when they came into Israel. I saw one of them driving a huge black BMW through the rubble. Where all of this has come from, if there's a genocide and all you see is rubble, I'm not sure. But there they are killing fellow Arabs. So where this peace plan is going to go is very questionable.
Absolutely, it would just depend on the kind of demilitarization of Gaza and the removal of Hamas, and that's probably the biggest sticking point to this plan.
Yeah.
But back to the hostages. I mean, I had the privilege of interviewing Dani Moran back in January of this year on the Middle East Report, whose son Omri was kidnapped by Hamas on October the 7th. And Dani has got this big long beard that he's grown ever since October the 7th. And he said to us on camera that he will not cut his beard or shave his beard until his son Omri comes home. So for me to actually then see the images and the video footage of Omri coming home, to be with his family, to be reunited with his wife and his 2 children and his parents, is an absolute delight, particularly when you get to know on a personal level some of the hostages and their families and their tireless campaign to bring their loved ones home. They are absolutely inspirational. They are remarkable people. Just share with us the resolve and the power to keep going for 2 long years to bring their loved ones home.
I think the human spirit is quite strong, and I think what has happened to these people is indicative of what Israeli society is about. It's indicative of how, from the 7th of October, when they were really at rock bottom on that day, how they pulled together and basically created a miracle, turned everything around, and have come out there with Israel intact, with the people harmonized. And I think these parents show us what kind of people live in Israel, what kind of people have been able to withstand the continued attacks. If you think of all the wars that have taken place, 2014, 2018, 2021, these were going on from Gaza alone, you know, these intifadas that have taken place. And the people have withstood it, and you've been there since 7th of October. And you've seen how people carry on living despite all this. So they have this connection, this family, this belief, even if they're not deeply religious, there's still this connection to Hashem. There has to be. And it gives them strength and the unity that they can create within the family, within the country. And clearly this unity is at the core of the problem, because you can't break it. And you saw how the parents withstood that. They wouldn't be broken, however sad they felt.
Absolutely.
You know?
But for me, what was extraordinary was the smiles coming back on Israeli faces. I mean, knowing that the Israelis have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, we've seen the dispersion of, 180,000 people, Israelis, from the south and the north of Israel. This whole shock that we were attacked, everyone's connected to everyone in Israel, so everyone would have known one of the hostages. Everyone would have known a family member who were murdered so brutally by Hamas on October the 7th. And to see the Israelis smiling again, that's delightful, absolutely special. Just share with us the kind of thing that life can begin to return a little bit back to normal now that their hostages are home.
So you know, when you were there, you felt the tension in the air, even though people were living and the beaches were full and so on, you felt that tension. And I was there a year ago, I haven't been back since, and you felt, I was with my family there, and the tension was palpable. Having spoken to my family since they were released, you could feel the relief. I could see the smiles on their faces, even though I wasn't looking at them. And I felt it. I felt as though a weight had been lifted off me, and I'm living here in England. So yeah, this is I think the biggest thing that I felt and noticed was how people feel that they can begin to live again. I have a pair of shoes that I bought, and it's got, on one sole it's got "We will," and on the other one it's got "We will dance again." The two words on each shoe. It's got little Magen Davids on it, and it's got Am Yisrael Chai on it, and you suddenly felt you can put those shoes on and dance again.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So let's have a listen to the IDF spokesman announcing the ceasefire as part of Donald Trump's 20-point plan for peace for Gaza, and also the announcement that the hostages are coming home.
Today, after 738 days, the last 20 living hostages have come home. After enduring the cruel captivity of the Hamas terrorist organization, today they return to their families, to their homes, and to their nation. This is a defining moment, a moment that belongs to the people of Israel and to all those who believe in humanity, a moment that belongs to the soldiers who fought with courage, to the families who waited in faith, and to the fallen whose sacrifice made this day possible. The IDF has kept its sacred promise to bring our people home, and we will not rest until the mission is complete. We are prepared for the return of all the fallen hostages and expect Hamas to abide by the terms of the agreement. On this night of Simchat Torah, when light returns after great darkness, we say together, "Welcome home." Today, the state of Israel stands taller. From the depth of our pain, we have shown the world that Israel does not forget its people. No man or woman is left behind. May their return bring strength to us all.
And that was courtesy of the IDF, and I'm very proud to be associated with the Israeli Defense Force and for those brave soldiers who fought against this Islamist terror organisation that committed the worst crimes of genocide against the Jewish people since the Second World War. And so good to know that not only the soldiers are coming home, but the hostages have come home as well. What was your takeaway moment of Monday, the 13th of October, which will go down as a day in history in Israel, the day that the hostages come home? And for me, the takeaway moment, because I was preparing a program on this, plus I was watching I-24 News to get the latest development, see what's happening. And I love the fact that the hostages had been released. They'd been put on those big military helicopters, and they deliberately flew them over Hostage Square in Tel Aviv so that the hostages could sense the amount of love and admiration and support from those Israelis who attended the Hostage Square and have been there ever since October the 7th, putting so much pressure on the Israeli government and governments around the world to bring their hostages home.
So yeah, that was amazing, because the hostages, of course, had been told that Israel had given up on them, that their parents had given up on them. So for them to see crowds like that standing for them must have been just such a relief. For me, there was another helicopter on a hospital roof. I don't know if you saw it, and the hostage came out and he raised the Israeli flag. It made me want to cry. It was just that he had the fortitude to think of who he was, who his country was, his countrymen, and to share that emotion, just in that one gesture, to share that emotion with the world, to say, we're here, we survived, and we're always going to be here. For me, that was unbelievably incredible. The other takeaway was a little more deep-seated, I think, was the howling. I can't remember which hostage it was. When the father saw him and hugged him, he started howling from the depths of his soul. The sound that he made was almost uncontrollable. And I remember feeling that when I saw the film The Pianist. I think I've told you that story before. I remember feeling that because it was the first time I felt that it was happening again since the war. And there was nothing I could do to protect my children. And I could hear that in that man's voice. He said, I couldn't help my son, but thank God he's home now.
Let's look at this inspirational report put together by Stand With Us, who are an excellent organisation that promotes understanding about Israel and the Jewish people on campus. And this is their view of the hostages coming home. Very emotional. Take a look.
אבא חזר מעזה, רוני. אתם היום תראו את אבא.
Well, thank you, stand with us, and thank you for our viewers. Thank you for all of you who have prayed that the hostages would come home every day. We've literally seen our prayers answered on this extraordinary day, which was Monday, the 13th of October, which will go down as one of Israel's greatest days in her history. I have to, there's something gives me the kind of goosebumps and the chills with this one, because when you think about it, October the 7th happened on Simchat Torah, which is the end of the high holidays. This is the day of the giving of the law, and the rabbis dance and sing around the Torah scrolls. That happened on Simchat Torah 2023, and it ended on Simchat Torah 2025, 2 years later. I haven't really unpacked this, but I know that there's deep spiritual connection in this. Give us your thoughts on the remarkable timing that the war started on Simchat Torah and it finished it on Simchat Torah 2 years later.
I don't know, I haven't unpacked it either. I can only think that there's a message for us, that it happened at all, that 2023 happened at all, must have been a message. Something was happening that had to be sifted through. And I think it was a little bit of golden calf type thing, where there was too much hedonism, too much prosperity. And I hate to say it because it makes me feel as though I'm willing somebody to get hurt and so on, but I'm not. But I think there was a message for us to learn from. And I think it's taken those 2 years for the message to come through. And I'm just thinking of it as I go, because I haven't yet either worked through it. But I think that message, it's taken all this time for this message to be received. And I think finally it's been received, that they can, from now on, with the renewal, the starting again to read the Torah, to read the story of where we came from and how we traveled through time, that we can begin to do that again from a positive point of view. And the hostages are here, they're home, and we can move from there now. We can move on and learn from our history and look to the future. I think that's what's
I think when
coming into my head.
When I've had discussions and long discussions with my Israeli family or friends in Israel, and they're very secular, they still honor the Lord and they still honor Hashem, but it's awoken their kind of Jewish identity of who they are and who their God is. And I think this is one of what God has allowed. He allows evil to happen for his purposes, but he also punishes those who carry out such evil, particularly against his people. But he's used it as a awakening call to remind you, his people, of who you are and the call of God upon your life, and that you are to be the light unto the Gentiles. You are to be the light unto the world, which Israel is. But it's that process of refinement that Israel's been through, and it's literally been a refiner's fire. And Israel's come out of it stronger, bolder and tougher than before.
Not only Israel. I think you'll find across the world there's people, Jewish people particularly, have more of a connection. And people who are genuine, people who are genuinely your friends, people that you genuinely have a connection with, have come through and have united. And Jews, I think more Jews probably went to synagogue these years than have in the past. But it's also sifted out the people who are not with us. And that's been a painful exercise of learning who to put your trust in, who to put your faith in. Not the faith that you obviously have for Hashem, but the faith that you have in friends, your friendships, where to put your well-being in, how to embrace people. And it's sifted that through for you. And it's been a very hard lesson. I think, very hard to come to terms. There's so many people have said to me, but I lost my friends. I have no friends anymore. I live in an area where I don't have my family, I don't have a community, but I now also don't have friends.
Well, they're not real friends.
Exactly, but this is what's reported to us.
They're not genuine, they're not real friends. I will not have friendship with anyone that
I'm agreeing with you.
I can't, it's impossible.
Yeah. But so many university students go to university, and if there isn't a Jewish fellowship there, they don't make friends. They're isolated, and in a way, that gives them more of a connection to who they are as human beings, and gives them that strength, that chazak that we were talking about earlier, gives them that strength to get through it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what did you make on the fact that on this historic day that the 20 remaining hostages that were alive came home to their loved ones? President Trump couldn't help but to fly into Israel on Air Force One. His Air Force One plane flew over Hostage Square in Tel Aviv before it landed at Ben Gurion Airport. And then we had President Trump address the Israeli Knesset. He's only the 4th US president ever to address Israel's parliament, where we got a standing ovation. I think for President Trump, he loves Israel, Israel loves him, and they thank him for what he's done to help bring the hostages home and help Israel virtually destroy Hamas in Gaza.
Well, I think we all know that without President Trump, this war wouldn't have gone this way. It would have been a very different war. And I think he was sincere, but also very funny. I think the first thing, he looked around and thanked everybody for inviting him, and he said, "Nice building." I mean, he was looking at the real estate of the building. And I think it was funny, like when he spoke about Bibi and how powerful Bibi is, but a hard bargainer. And he said, and he looked to Herzog and he said to Herzog, "Are you going to give him a reprieve?" And then he said, "Champagne and cigars when you've done all this." You know, so I think it was very funny, but he was also very sincere and genuine. And I think he worked very hard to achieve this. And I think it was a project that he felt. He said it before he was even elected, that if he was elected, this is what he was going to do. And I think it was a project he felt he had to meet as soon as possible. And you could see it if you watched his face in that whole Knesset event. There was something deep-seated of something emotional and warm that came out of him, even despite the way he sometimes rambles on and so on. And I think that whole ceremony had to happen with the long speeches. I mean, people have said to me, "Why did they have to speak for so long?" And I just wanted to hear the gist of it.
Nearly 4 hours. I had to edit it down for our viewers to see today.
But it had to
nearly 4
happen.
hours.
It had to happen. It was part of the catharsis of the whole event. You know, there's a huge thing that we've all had to take on board.
Absolutely.
And I think this was like the beginning of a new journey. And I think it had to happen. People had to hear what was said, and I think it had to be that long. And yeah, I mean, I welcome him. I've always loved President Trump. Even before he went into politics, I used to think he would make a good president. So I've always loved him.
Well, that's good foresight.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts as well on him wanting to meet the hostage families and those who had been rescued as part of the hostage deal, and those who have come back to their loved ones? And these are the first people. Of course, when he came into the Knesset, he met our good friend Amir Ohana, who's the Speaker of the House, and thanks to you, I've interviewed him twice for this program, which has been amazing. And of course, we had Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister there, Sarah Netanyahu, his wife there as well, with lots of dignitaries. But before he really met them, he wanted to meet the families of the hostages and the Family Hostage Forum in the Knesset to give them questions that they might want to ask on the situation. Share with us how he generally loves and cares about the hostages and the families of the hostages.
He does. This is a family man. This is a man who, regardless of how he comes across, is a man with heart. And he's been talking about this since it happened. And he saw the film. And I've heard him speak with pain in his heart what happened to these people. And as I said before, this was his mission, that he was going to put an end to it. But I think he also wanted the hostage families to know that he's done this for them, that he was with them all the way. And he's done this for them, and they after all, they were important. They were probably the most important spearhead that he had to carry through and make sure that this war, because there've been wars in the past that presidents have not got involved in, but this war, there was a war in 2018. He was president. He didn't come to Israel, but this war he had to do because of what happened to these people, and they were at the center of what he was doing.
Absolutely. And of course, he's close friends with Steve Witkoff, his special envoy. has been passionate and even putting pressure on Bibi to do everything he can to bring the hostages home. But let's have a look now, thanks to the GPO, which is the Israeli government press office of President Trump, walking through the doors of the Knesset and then a meeting and addressing the families of the hostages. This is remarkable. Take a look.
You guys know each other. We know each other. Amen to that. Yes, sir. Amen.
It's not just to bring body, because the family need her in order to recover.
How old was your daughter?
27 years old.
Now that the living have been brought home, we must ensure the fallen are too. Only you can make sure no one is left behind.
Thank you very much, Dani.
Thank you.
Sorry you had to go through it, but we're working very hard on that situation right there. I know exactly what you're talking about. Thank you very much.
I just want to say that today, to see everyone come back gives big closure. I just want all the deceased ones to come back as well. So we will all get our proper closure.
Thank God, today we celebrate to see back the hostages. But on behalf of my son and other 915 soldiers that sacrificed themselves in order to get to that point, we have a request from you. We cannot stop the war before we destroy the Hamas. We will not have a real peace and a real security if Hamas forces will stay in Gaza.
Thanks to our country, our army, our government, thanks to all of them. My son was back home and no one killed when he back home. There is a lot of families that want to be in my place. They should be in my place because my son is back, even he died. But one more important thing, the one that kidnapped my son was a social worker of UNRWA. If this organization will continue to exist, we will never have a peace. This is our aim, to close this organization all over the world, because they have just one thing they are done since ever: terror, and make sure we will not have any peace here.
I'm going to live in Be'eri. I'm rebuild my house because the terrorists, they burned 150 houses in Be'eri. So I want to tell you thank you. And we're going to rebuild the kibbutz, and we have only one country for us. We have to keep on this land, and we have to keep on this Israel.
And I don't know of any other world leader or any head of state that literally sits down with the families of the hostages and just has that open forum, open dialogue where they're free to give him and give the president questions. It shows you as well that he's a people's president. And the fact that, I mean, also we saw at Hostage Square these kind of big placards with pictures of President Trump on them. And the fact is that in the West here in Britain, Trump is a very decisive figure. If you're on the left, you hate him. If you're on the right, even some are like wary, but obviously others absolutely love him. But in Israel, it doesn't matter if you're on the political left, on the political right, whether you're religious or secular, they all love President Trump. And share with us how essentially he has been Israel's greatest friend. It almost as well seems like God's providence, that he knew what was going to happen. He knew what was going to happen on October the 7th. So what God allowed in his providence was not to allow President Trump to take office for a second term in 2020, but then come back and regain the presidency in 2025 so that he can help Israel reshape the entire Middle East.
Well, those years was like his years out in the field where he consolidated. I mean, he says himself that in his first term he had a lot to learn, and then he had those 4 years where he consolidated, and when he came into office the second time, I mean, he hit the ground running. He had everything planned. He knew exactly who was going to be in his administration, how he was going to run it, and he knew what he was going to do now this year, and he worked towards it. I think it shouldn't matter whether you're left or right. When you see a person who can do such good, and you shouldn't be judging him. You shouldn't be saying, oh, but, you know, I don't like him, but. This, I think Boris Johnson wrote an article about this word but, when people use it. I can do this, but. It shouldn't be there. When somebody has had heart, when he's saved lives, when he's stopped a war, or caused a ceasefire, I'm not sure he stopped the war, but had a ceasefire, stopped the killing, and he's done it with good grace, and he's done it with all his efforts and all the heart that he's got. It shouldn't matter what your political divide is. You know, you should just be there and say, thank God this is what he's done.
He's a history maker.
Completely
and he's
history
achieved
making.
more
Completely.
than President Biden
and I think Amir once said to you that in Israel, I'm sure he said it to you, that in Israel, that left and right is different to left and right here. That when it comes to the security of Israel, there is no left and right. People are together. You might be left and right politically, but when you're looking after human beings, you look after them. There's no politics involved in looking after people.
Yeah, so you must have been really proud, and we'll show an extract of this later, of the Speaker of the House, Amir Khan, who you kindly introduced me to on the Middle East Report back in 2016. And then back in 2019, I had the privilege of interviewing him in his office. So we were conducting interviews, had a fantastic interview with Michael Oren, who was working in the Prime Minister's office. He was also Israel's ambassador to the United States. And we're just walking along the corridor, and then Amir bumps into me. Hello, Simon, what are you doing here in the Knesset? Do you want to come into my office? I'm happy to give you an interview. So I came into his office and then
You weren't expecting it?
I wasn't expecting that at all. So we got an extra interview, which was a bit of a bonus. That's the hardest recordings I've ever done. Not only was the security tough, getting a camera crew into literally the Knesset, but knowing the Israelis' national support is to move goalposts. You have one interview set up, this time is set up, then they move it and change it. But also had the privilege as well of interviewing Sharon Klaff as well, the Deputy Foreign Minister. So it's amazing to see these two members of Knesset that you introduced me to are now in prominent positions, Speaker of the House and the Deputy Foreign Minister. So let's have a look now at this historic day that occurred on Monday, the 13th of October, when President Trump, only the 4th US president ever to address the Israeli Knesset, and he gives special thanks to Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Members of the Knesset, it is now my distinct honor to invite the President of the United States of America, His Excellency Donald J. Trump, to address the Knesset.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor. Nice place. Very nice place. Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, esteemed members of the Knesset, and cherished
citizens of Israel. We gather on a day of profound joy, of soaring hope, of renewed faith, and above all, a day to give our deepest thanks to the Almighty God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious. 28 more precious loved ones are coming home at last to rest in this sacred soil for all of time. And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East. I want to express my gratitude to a man of exceptional courage and patriotism, whose partnership did so much to make this momentous day possible. You know who I'm talking about. There's only one, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Bibi, please stand up. And he is not easy, I want to tell you. He's not the easiest guy to deal with, but that's what makes him great. That's what makes him great. Thank you very much, baby. Great job.
That was courtesy of the government press office in Israel, and that was President Trump's address to the Knesset, to the parliamentarians, and to the nation of Israel. Israel loves him, he loves Israel. It was extraordinary. Talking more about Donald Trump's 20-point plan for peace now, which is very ambitious, but it's on the basis that, that Gaza will be demilitarized and there is no future for Hamas. And of course, this is kind of the biggest sticking point in this plan, which is phase 2 of this plan, can actually work.
I'm not sure we're going to get to phase 2 of the plan. Already they've broken the phase 1 because they haven't returned all the deceased hostages. So already that's broken, and already they've got their arms back and their uniforms back, as I said before, with their cars and everything. And already they're starting to kill people. So if they haven't got Jews to kill, they'll just kill off a few of their own people. So I don't know how you know, I wrote my peace plan before President Trump was elected. And I spoke about setting up a situation where they would de-radicalize the people of Gaza, which they have to do, because now it's all in the media, how they have been radicalized from birth virtually. How they don't, when they go to kindergarten, they put on uniforms and have fake guns and they learn how to kill Jews. So I don't know how they're going to de-radicalize them. If they're talking of 2 million people, I don't think they're 2 million, but if they're talking, how do you de-radicalize them? That's the first thing. The peace plan, for me, was more notable by what it didn't say than what it did say. And it didn't mention the United Nations, as far as I can see, and it didn't mention the word jihad. Now, this war in Israel is a war in Israel, but jihad is a war in the world. That's what's going on across the world. There's a global jihad happening. And I'm not sure how they're going to combat this global jihad, especially when you've got, as happened in Iran, where you had the communists and the extreme religious people coming together to form the Republic of Iran, the Iranian Republic of Iran. No, I can't think of what's it called. The Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah.
They came together to fight the Shah, and then they just bumped off the communists. And we now have this Red-Green Alliance again that you and I spoke about how many years ago?
A long time ago. We've got 7 minutes left of the programme, so there's 2 aspects that I want to discuss really, particularly regarding President Trump's 20-point plan for peace in Gaza. The first one is, again, Israel has to pay a high cost. I understand this because this is all about honour in the Arab world, and it's about giving Hamas a kind of victory that they can claim. But the fact is that Israel has had to release 250 Palestinian prisoners who are serving life sentences, despite the fact that The Guardian called them today not even prisoners but detainees, and making a moral comparison between the Israeli hostages that were held by Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences for committing crimes of murder against Israelis and Jewish people for being locked up in Israeli prisons on the same moral comparison. But the fact that one of those prisoners, who was a police officer in 2000, and when 2 Israeli reservists took a wrong turn, ended up in Ramallah, was lynched by a mob. They were then taken to the police cells for their own safety and protection. But this police officer took part in that horrific lynching of those 2 Israeli reserve soldiers. And then what we saw is that one of those Palestinian murderers came out of the building, put his hand up in the air, covered in blood. And that was the 25th anniversary of that horrific lynching. So share with us as well the pain that Israel has had to do in releasing some of these Palestinian terrorists, literally with blood on their hands, for peace and to give some form of restoration of honour to Hamas.
So this is one that we know about, and I remember seeing that on television. It wasn't on long because then it got cut and nobody ever showed it again. And what you see fast forward is this red hand was used in I think the Oscar ceremony to support Gaza. I don't know if you saw that. They used this red hand. They all had a badge with the red hand on and the red triangle. It all comes from that lynching. And I don't think they realized that it was Jews that got killed with that red hand. So that's the first thing, how the world has inverted that. The other person that's being let out, I believe, is the one that killed Kay Wilson's friend. Do you remember Kay Wilson?
Okay, yes, she's been on the programme.
Yes,
her friend came on the
so
programme.
that guy is being let out. The man who stabbed her 18 times and left her for dead.
Oof.
He's being left out.
Because she was a Christian and her friend came on to share their experience of going hiking.
That's right.
In the hills around Jerusalem. And then she was stabbed in a horrific frenzy.
A friend was killed.
And a friend was escaped. So she came on to share that horrific experience. That must be over 10 years ago now.
It's probably more than 10 years. It must be 14, 15 years, somewhere there. Also, there was a young boy killed who went hiking in the Judean hills. He was killed. I see his grave in the cemetery where my parents are buried, a little half grave, and my brother knew the father. Terrible, and I would imagine that this guy is also one of those prisoners. So they're not letting out hostages, they're letting out hardened criminals who've been through a court of law that is the court of laws are based on English law from the Mandate days. So we have proper courts of law. It's not some sort of cowboy outfit. They're put in prison, they have a life sentence, and now they have to be let out. And this is the extent that Israelis will go to save people.
Absolutely. Got 2 quick questions before we finish the programme, Sharon, and this is what concerns me. It's always the blueprint, and this is the blueprint in the Gaza police plan that says the following, point number 19 and point number 20. While Gaza's redevelopment advances and when the PA reform programme is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to a Palestinian self-determination and statehood. when we recognise the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Point 20. The United States will establish dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for a peaceful and prosperous coexistence. So here we go. The caveat in all of this is that this peace plan, if it's successful, will lead to the establishment of a Palestinian state.
I think the key word there is that it's got no time scale on it. And I think these words have been put together to bring the hostages home, basically. I think that's all they are, because there's no time scale on it. And I think they know from the past that this is not going to be possible and it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. And my final question to you is, share with us how much a big hammer blow the ceasefire is in Gaza, the Israeli hostages come home, to the radical Islamists and the hard left who have been using the cause of Gaza for their evil political agenda.
I don't know that's a hammer blow. They're claiming victory. They're doing something that they call a hudna, which means we'll just step back, we'll accept what you call a ceasefire, but remember, we're planning, we're plotting, and we'll come back again.
And just share with us your thoughts really on what it means to you, what it means for the Jewish community and your family in Israel to know that these 20 hostages who are remarkable and courageous have come back to their loved ones, and which is a truly historic day and historic week for Israel.
I think it's a blessing. It's a blessing that they're brought back as a symbol of the integrity and the strength of the Jewish people. And I think for that, it's really very powerful.
Amazing. Sharon, I couldn't think of anyone better to actually share this program with, to rejoice in the fact that the Israeli hostages have come home. There is a ceasefire in Gaza, and we can see the hand of God moving so compassionately and gracefully on Israel. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for watching this program at home. I think as Christians we can all rejoice and thank God for the deliverance of the Israeli hostages, that they have finally come home to their loved ones. And this is a special day for Israel. This is a special day for all of us who love Israel and the Jewish people, and we shall rejoice in it. And we need to thank God for his hand of mercy in bringing the hostages home back to Israel, as this is a glorious day, and we should all be joyful at the return of the hostages. So thank you for watching this week's The Middle East Report.